Hello and welcome to Owning the Narrative. I am Bulow. The show will feature the top news of the week, complete with my observations, and even a little bit of sarcasm thrown in. The top news stories will be taken from my morning news briefings that I write on the Rick Bulow New Media blog every weekday morning. If you go on to like what you see, smash that thumbs up button. And now, let's go right into the news. Last Tuesday, I talked about Bill and Melinda Gates getting a divorce. There's a little more information on it. Turns out that Melinda Gates had reportedly met with divorce lawyers in 2019 when all this stuff about Bill Gates meeting with Jeffrey Epstein had circulated. This coming from my good friends over at redstate.com. And it says, report Melinda Gates was concerned about Bill Gates' contact with Jeffrey Epstein. Bill and Melinda Gates just announced they would be divorcing this past week on May 3rd after 27 years of marriage, as we reported. But according to a new Wall Street Journal report, Melinda Gates had been talking to lawyers since 2019, since the story about Jeffrey Epstein blew up and it was reported that her husband Bill had met with Epstein. But the couple didn't work out the agreement surrounding the divorce until this past week, when they announced the divorce. According to the Journal, Melinda was unsettled by Epstein from the outset when she met him in 2013. But when she expressed concerns about it at the time, her husband reportedly disregarded her concerns and continued to meet with Epstein. According to the Daily Beast, Gates had known Epstein since 2011. Now, this was all after Epstein pled guilty in 2008 to a felony charge of solicitation of prostitution involving a minor and served 13 months in jail. Gates has previously downplayed the relationship. From Daily Beast, I met him, I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him. Gates said in September 2019 as media coverage into his connections with Epstein were heating up. I didn't go to New Mexico or Florida or Palm Beach or any of that. There were people around him who were saying, hey, if you want to raise money for global health and get more philanthropy, he knows a lot of rich people. Every meeting where I was with him were meetings with men. I was never at any parties or anything like that. He never donated any money to anything that I know about. But for someone who didn't have a business relationship or friendship with him, he met with them multiple times, at least once involving Palm Beach, something contrary to what he said, according to the Daily Beast. The New York Times revealed Gates had met with Epstein at a 2011 get-together at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse that included the financier's girlfriend, Ava Anderson Dubin, and her daughter. Virginia Jeffrey, a survivor of Epstein's sex ring, has accused Dubin's hedge fund husband Glenn of abuse, a charge he has strenuously denied. Indeed, the Times reported Gates visited Epstein multiple times from 2011 to 2013, and that Epstein had tried pitching a new charitable fund to J.P. Morgan on chosen to the Gates Foundation. In 2013, Gates also took a ride on Epstein's private jet, christened by tabloids as the Lolita Express, from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey to Palm Beach, Florida, according to flight records reviewed by the Times. CNBC also reported that Gates rendezvoused with Epstein in New York in 2013. The Daily Beast reported that Epstein said Gates cut off the contact sometime at the end of 2014. Now, this is all rather fascinating. It may be that this is in part PR by Melinda Gates in her divorce battle with her husband, but it does appear that the relationship with Epstein was deeper than Bill Gates claimed. It also raises questions about why, even after Epstein's guilty plea, Gates continued to have contact with Epstein. Also, if it was such a significant thing in the marriage, as this report suggests, who knew what when? And, most importantly, what was unnerving her about their relationship? Now, I have an article from the Daily Beast, which I'll probably get to tomorrow on this, and I have the Wall Street Journal today, which I will read after this article from the Washington Examiner. And it reads, Gates' divorce partially motivated by dealings with Jeffrey Epstein, according to a report. The separation of Bill and Melinda Gates was partially motivated by the former's dealings with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to a new report. Dating back to 2013, a source of concern for Melinda Gates, a global cause for women's rights, was Bill Gates' frequent meetings with Epstein. People familiar with the matter, including a former employee of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, told the Wall Street Journal. Beginning in 2011, Bill Gates met with Epstein on numerous occasions and once stayed at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse late into the night. More than a dozen people familiar with the relationship told the New York Times. Bridget Arnold, a spokeswoman for Bill Gates, said the visits were only to discuss philanthropy and that Bill Gates regrets ever meeting with Epstein and recognizes that it was an error in judgment to do so. Gates recognizes that entertaining Epstein's ideas related to philanthropy gave Epstein an undeserved platform that was at odds with Gates' personal values and the values of his foundation, Arnold said. When asked in September 2019 about his relationship with Epstein by the Wall Street Journal, Gates said he met him, but didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him. And pretty much the same thing that was in the rest of the article. Epstein, who was arrested in July 2019, was charged with sex trafficking and conspiracy for allegedly abusing girls as young as 14. He pleaded not guilty to the charges before he was found dead in his Manhattan prison cell that August. The New York City medical examiner determined Epstein's death to be a suicide. Epstein's business associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, was arrested last July and charged with transporting a minor for the purpose of criminal sexual activity and conspiring to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. A suspending indictment filed in March of this year added charges of sex trafficking to allegations that Maxwell, 59, recruited underage girls to be abused by Epstein. The trial for Maxwell was proposed until the fall on the grounds that the defense needed more time to prepare. In addition to the Microsoft co-founder, Epstein has had reported ties to several public figures, including Prince Andrew and former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Following a great deal of thought and a lot of work on their relationship, Bill and Melinda Gates announced their divorce. After 27 years of marriage, we no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in this next phase of our lives, the couple said last Monday. And that's that from the Washington Examiner. So yeah, some of it's a little bit iffy, but then again, most of the things surrounding Bill Gates pretty much is, according to a few people. But here's that Wall Street Journal article that I mentioned, and that had been mentioned in the two prior articles. Melinda Gates was meeting with divorce lawyers since 2019 to end marriage with Bill Gates. The philanthropist had discussions with lawyers in October 2019, around when the Microsoft co-founder's ties with Jeffrey Epstein became public. By Emily Glazer and Khadija Safdar, the split between Bill and Melinda Gates, announced last week, has been in the works for a long time. Ms. Gates consulted with divorce lawyers roughly 2 years before she filed for divorce from Mr. Gates, saying that their marriage was irretrievably broken, according to people familiar with the matter and documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. The 56-year-old philanthropist has been working with lawyers at several firms since at least 2019 to unwind the marriage of more than 25 years, according to these people in the documents. Last Monday, the billionaire couple announced that they were ending their marriage. In a joint statement on Twitter, they said, "We no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in this next phase of our lives." Now, the couple hadn't said what prompted the split. However, one source of concern for Ms. Gates was her husband's dealings with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. According to the people and a former employee of their charity, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Ms. Gates is concerned about the relationship dated as far back as 2013, the former employee said. The couple negotiated their divorce throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the documents show. They have 3 children who are now 18 years or older, the divorce filing shows. The youngest is a senior in high school. According to the documents reviewed by the journal, Ms. Gates and her advisors held a number of calls in October 2019 when the New York Times reported that that Mr. Gates had met with Mr. Epstein on numerous occasions. Mr. Gates once stayed into the night at Mr. Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, the Times reported. Bridget Arnold, a spokeswoman for Mr. Gates, said in 2019 that the software mogul and Mr. Epstein had met multiple times to discuss philanthropy. Bill Gates regrets every meeting with Epstein and recognizes that it was an error in judgment to do so, Ms. Arnold said at the time. Mr. Epstein died in jail in August 2019, awaiting trial on federal charges related to sex trafficking. Mr. Gates, a global advocate for women and girls, had told her, or Ms. Gates, rather, a global advocate for women and girls, had told her husband she was uncomfortable with Mr. Epstein after the couple met him together in 2013. The former employee of the Gates Foundation said, Mr. Gates and some employees of the Gates Foundation continued their relationship with Mr. Epstein despite her concerns, this person said. The Daily Beast earlier reported on the 2013 meeting and Ms. Gates' concern with Mr. Epstein. When asked about his relationship with Mr. Epstein in a September 2019 interview with the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Gates said, I met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him. A spokeswoman for Mr. Gates, who was 65 years old, said Friday he stands by his 2019 statement to the Journal and declined to comment further. A spokeswoman for Ms. Gates didn't respond to questions about her reasons for seeking a divorce. In early 2020, Mr. and Ms. Gates surprised many people when they said that they would attend the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, an annual gathering of business and world leaders that the power couple had attended for years. A few months later, on March 13, Mr. Gates said he was resigning from the boards of Microsoft Corp. and Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated. The Microsoft co-founder said he planned to focus more on his philanthropic efforts. Now, by that time, the Gateses were already in discussions to divide their vast wealth. According to the people familiar with the matter in the documents, legal teams from both sides were privately in discussions with a mediator to work out a separation, the documents show. Mr. Gates' legal team had by then already included New York divorce lawyer Robert Stephen Cohen, the documents show, or rather Ms. Gates' legal team, rather. Mr. Cohen has represented Michael Bloomberg, Henry Kravis, and Ivana Trump in their divorces. Mr. Gates also has some star lawyers, including Ronald Olson, a partner for the firm Munger, Tolles and Olson LLP, who has represented Mark Zuckerberg. Among others, Mr. Olson is a board member at Berkshire Hathaway, where he sat alongside Mr. Gates and Ms. Gates' close friend, Warren Buffett. The May 3rd divorce filing says the couple had agreed to a separation contract to divide their assets, a fortune estimated at $130 billion by Forbes. Their assets include a $131 million lakeside compound in Washington State called Xanadu 2.0, a rare Leonardo da Vinci notebook, and investments in Microsoft and Four Seasons Hotel. Last week, Mr. Gates' investment firm transferred nearly $2.4 billion worth of public company shares to Ms. Gates, including stakes in car dealership owner AutoNation, a Mexican broadcaster, and a Canadian railroad. The Gateses have said that they would give away most of their wealth and donated more than $36 billion to the Gates Foundation over the years. The couple said that they plan to remain co-chairs at the foundation and during the lead after their divorce. We continue to share a belief in that mission, they said in their Twitter statement. Ms. Gates signed her divorce petition in Bellevue, Washington, near the family home and the foundation's headquarters, according to the filing. Mr. Gates signed the papers from Palm Desert, California. Now, going back through this article, you know, like I said, the Daily Beast had earlier reported on the 2013 meeting. I'll get into that tomorrow. And I might take a look at the 2019 interview, you know, just to see what the deal is with that. But yeah, yeah, things are getting rather interesting and intriguing along those lines, but yeah, so there's this from Slate magazine, and it's entitled Melinda Gates reportedly meeting with divorce lawyers since 2019. The split between Bill and Melinda Gates didn't exactly come out of nowhere. Melinda Gates had been speaking with divorce lawyers since at least 2019, reports the Wall Street Journal. Although the couple hasn't publicly said what led to the split, sources tell the paper that Melinda Gates was concerned about her husband's connection with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Records reviewed by the Journal show Gates and her lawyers held numerous calls in October 2019, which just happened to be when the New York Times reported Gates met numerous times with Epstein. The connection between the two billionaires raised plenty of eyebrows, in part because Bill Gates ended the relationship after Epstein had been convicted of sex crimes. Melinda Gates had already expressed concerns about Epstein years earlier, telling her husband that she was uncomfortable with him in 2013. The Daily Beast had already reported those concerns, claiming Melinda Gates told friends she was uncomfortable around Epstein and didn't want anything to do with him. Bill Gates has long tried to minimize his relationship with Epstein. I met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him, Gates said in a 2019 interview. Bill Gates also acknowledged that it was a mistake to meet him, although he tried to defend himself slightly by saying that it was for a good cause. I made a mistake in judgment that I thought that those discussions would lead, literally, to billions of dollars going to global health. It turned out that was a bad judgment, Gates said at a 2019 conference. Bill and Melinda Gates have been married for 27 years and announced their split on May 3rd, saying in a joint statement that we no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in this next phase of our lives. But by the time they made the announcement, they were already in discussions about ending their marriage for more than a year. In court documents, Melinda Gates said the couple's marriage is irretrievably broken. Now, like I said, I'll have more on that tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I have the article from the Daily Beast in tomorrow's article, as well as a couple of others. But let me know in the comments below what you think about Melinda Gates' divorce. You know, what's your take on Bill Gates meeting with Jeffrey Epstein? And do you think Melinda Gates had just cause in being leery about her husband's relationship? And I'll see you in the next video. As reported last week, Bill and Melinda Gates are getting a divorce. As reported yesterday, Melinda Gates had started divorce proceedings in 2019 because of her husband Bill Gates' relationship to financier Jeffrey Epstein. There's still more on that I didn't get to yesterday, like this article right here from the Daily Beast entitled Melinda Gates warned Bill about Jeffrey Epstein. Melinda Gates met with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein alongside her husband Bill in New York City, and soon after said she was furious at the relationship between the two men. According to people familiar with the situation, the previously unreported meeting occurred at Epstein's Upper East Side mansion in September 2013. On the same day, the couple accepted the Lasker Bloomberg Public Service Award at the Pierre Hotel and were photographed alongside then-Mayor Mike Bloomberg. The meeting would prove a turning point in Gates' relationship with Epstein. The people familiar with the matter say, as Melinda told friends about after the encounter, how uncomfortable she was in the company of the wealthy sex offender and how she wanted nothing to do with him. Gates' friendship with Epstein, who for years was accused of molesting scores of underage girls, still haunts Melinda, according to friends of the couple who spoke to the Daily Beast, and this week in light of the pair's divorce announcement, which had been weeks in the making. The Daily Beast has learned that financial and public relations specialists have been feverishly working on details of the pair's split for weeks before the couple announced their divorce on Monday, After a great deal of thought and a lot of work on our relationship, we have made the decision to end our marriage, the two said in a brief statement posted on Twitter. We have raised three incredible children and built a foundation that works all over the world to enable all people to lead healthy, productive lives. A representative for Bill and Melinda Gates did not respond to requests for comment on this report. The ties between Gates and Epstein run much deeper than the tech mogul first admitted. As the New York Times reported beginning in 2011, Gates met with Epstein on numerous occasions. Now, this was 3 years after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting an underage girl in Florida. By then, accusations that Epstein exploited girls and young women were widely reported in the press. As the Times reported, two people close to Gates acted as intermediaries between the two. Boris Nikolic, a biotech investor and former advisor to Gates, who was mysteriously named a backup executor in Epstein's last will and testament, and Melanie Walker, who worked at the Gates Foundation and served as a science advisor to Epstein. A person close to Walker told the Daily Beast she did not attend nor help any meeting nor help set up any meetings. Between Gates and Epstein, Nikolic did not return multiple requests for comment. Soon after Epstein's arrest in July 2019, Gates became one of the many prominent people to face scrutiny over ties to the sex trafficker. The New York Times revealed Gates had met with Epstein at a 2011 get-together at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. That included the financier's ex-girlfriend, Ava Anderson Dubin, and her daughter, Virginia Jeffrey, a survivor of Epstein's sex ring, has accused Dubin's hedge fund husband Glenn of abuse, a charge he has strenuously denied. Indeed, the Times reported Gates visited Epstein multiple times from 2011 to 2013, and that Epstein had tried pitching a new charitable fund to J.P. Morgan honchos and to the Gates Foundation. In 2013, Gates also took a ride on Epstein's favorite jet, christened by tabloids as the Lolita Express, from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey to Palm Beach, Florida, according to flight records reviewed by the Times. CNBC also reported that Gates rendezvoused with Epstein in New York in 2013. When Gates first met Epstein, he was still Microsoft's chairman and the second richest person in the world, with a net worth of $56 billion. I've met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him, Gates said in September 2019. As media coverage and his connections with Epstein were heating up, I didn't go to New Mexico or Florida or Palm Beach or any of that. There were people around him who were saying, excuse me, hey, if you want to raise money for global health and get more philanthropy, he knows a lot of rich people. And it goes on to say, one associate in the technology world who has attended the same events as Epstein, including a TED conference in Monterey, California, was surprised Gates had considered cultivating philanthropic ties with the late pedophile. I can't make the claim that so many are claiming, the person told the Daily Beast on the condition of anonymity, referring to people in Epstein's orbit who said they had no suspicions of Epstein's abuse. Now, if you ask Bill Gates, he'll say, oh, I had absolutely no idea he wasn't up to anything of the highest moral character, but I seriously doubted Epstein's moral character. The people around him, the person added, referring to Epstein, had a varying spectrum of what they knew and what they didn't know and how they rationalized it. And it goes on. I have a link to it in the description below, but yeah, there's a lot coming out about it, and could this be could this be the main reason why Gates is so popular amongst the elites? Who knows? But all we do know is that this is definitely something to look out for. Then there's this. I just found this from Blacklisted News today. It says Melinda Gates stresses Bill Gates over ties to Jeffrey Epstein. COVID superstar media downing Bill Gates is having his reputation completely destroyed by Melinda Gates in the wake of their divorce. I don't think there's any question that her staff is leaking all this Epstein stuff to the media. Noah Shockman tweeted out, exclusive: Melinda Gates warned Bill Gates about Jeffrey Epstein. After a secret meeting between the couple and the wealthy sex offender she wanted nothing to do with Epstein, Bill had, a different attitude. I just read that article, and it goes on to say, pretty much what I had just said from the Daily Beast, and there were tweets. This tweet from David Enrick. A 2019 story about Bill Gates' relationship with Jeffrey Epstein appears to have been a key catalyst precipitating the Bill-Melinda divorce, according to Wall Street Journal. Here's the original New York Times story from October 2019 by Twitter on Fraud, James Stewart at NYT. Now, the New York Times revealed Gates had met with Epstein at a 2011 get-together at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. That included the fiancée or the financier's ex-girlfriend, Ava Anderson Dubin, and her daughter. Indeed, the Times reported Gates visited Epstein multiple times from 2011 to 2013, and that Epstein had tried pitching a new charitable fund to J.P. Morgan, honchos, and to the Gates Foundation. And here's the flight log of Epstein's private jet. Notice down 26 March. TB to PBI, flight number 2250, Bill Gates, and there's someone named LV there. I wonder if Epstein is Gates in his blackmail ring. Epstein was working with a lot of scientists and had plans to see the human race with his DNA 20 women at a time at Zorro Ranch. Wall Street Journal tweeted out yesterday, Melinda Gates met with divorce lawyers in 2019, say people familiar and documents reviewed by WSJ. One concerned her husband's dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. And there's a link from the Wall Street Journal, which I pointed out. When these revelations first came out, the media just brushed over them. When the coronavirus broke out, the media portrayed Gates as a visionary and a prophet. Here's a link from Google, who is the most powerful doctor in the world. Bill Gates, the business mogul, is the highest ranking answer currently used because the keywords used within the question also feature in the headline of a political article titled Meet the World's Most Powerful Doctor, Bill Gates, which was published in 2017. Are they still going to have him on the air after this? That's a good question. Something that's definitely going to be looked at in the not too distant future. But there's also this from the Daily Express over in the UK. Melinda Gates consulted divorce lawyers in 2019, concerns over Bill Gates' Epstein link. Melinda Gates has been consulting divorce lawyers since 2019, around the same time that Bill Gates' friendship with Jeffrey Epstein was coming under the spotlight, according to a U.S. newspaper. The Microsoft billionaire's wife said in 2019 her marriage was irretrievably broken. The Wall Street Journal reported over the weekend. It said she had been working with divorce lawyers since 2019 to finalize the breakup of a marriage that lasted more than 25 years. Bill Gates had flown with Epstein on a convicted pedophile's jet from New Jersey to Palm Beach, Florida, as far back as 2013, which was 4 years after Epstein had spent time in jail for soliciting a minor under the age of 18 for sex. The Wall Street Journal, citing a former employee of their charity, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has reported Melinda Gates has been worried about her husband's relationship with Epstein since 2013. These concerns came to a head several years later, and she had been talking to divorce lawyer Robert Stephen Cohen as far back as October 2019, the paper said. During that same month, the New York had reported Bill Gates had met with convicted pedophile Epstein on several occasions, and had once stayed late at his townhouse in the U.S. city. At the time, a spokeswoman for the Microsoft billionaire said the meetings had focused on philanthropy. Epstein had already served 18 months in a Florida prison on sex crimes charges in a 2008 plea deal. Flight records state that Microsoft founder flew on Epstein's jet in 2013, traveling from New Jersey to Palm Beach. When the meetings first came to light, Bill told the Wall Street Journal in 2019, I met him. I didn't have any business in this relationship or friendship with him. Bill and Melinda Gates, who between them have an estimated fortune worth $130 billion, or 92.4 billion pounds, signed their divorce filing on May 3rd. The couple had previously announced that their 3 children will inherit $10 million each, with the rest donated to charity under the Giving Pledge. Neither Bill nor Melinda Gates have revealed a specific reason for the divorce, which will end more than 25 years of marriage. They still plan to work together on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a source of people they're really interested in trying to win a Nobel Prize. So one thing that was part of this is, if it gets worse, then it ends that. It seems as if that was on the agenda, and that's for both of them. Bill and Melinda Gates issued a joint statement on the Twitter account last Monday to confirm they were divorcing. The couple will continue to work on the foundation, but we no longer believe we can work together as a couple in this next phase of our lives. The statement read, after a great deal of thought and a lot of work, we have made the decision to end our marriage. Over the last 27 years, we have raised 3 incredible children and built a foundation that works all over the world to enable all people to lead healthy, productive lives. We continue to share a belief in that mission and will continue to work together at the foundation. We no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in this next phase of our lives. We ask for space and privacy for our family as we begin to navigate this new life. Express.co.uk has contacted the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for comment. And of course, there has not been any at this point in time. And then there's this from news.com down in Australia. Bill Gates divorce, Melinda's concerns about friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Melinda Gates contacted divorce lawyers 2 years ago, with insiders claiming she had concerns about a friend of her husband. It seems that the split between Bill and Melinda Gates has been looming for some time, with new reports revealing Ms. Gates contacted divorce lawyers 2 years ago about separating from her billionaire husband. The 56-year-old has reportedly been in contact with several law firms since 2019 regarding her marriage to Mr. Gates, with people familiar with the matter and documents revealing Ms. Gates said the couple's relationship was irretrievably broken, according to the Wall Street Journal. The couple announced last week that they were divorcing after 27 years of marriage, revealing in a joint statement that they had been battling to save their relationship for some time. And it says, after a great deal of thought and a lot of work on our relationship, we have made the decision to end our marriage, they said. Pretty much what I mentioned from the last article. While the couple haven't announced what prompted their split, a former employee of their charity, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, told the Journal that Ms. Gates had concern about her husband's interactions with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The publication claimed her concerns about Mr. Gates' dealings with the financier dated as far back as 2013 when the couple met Mr. Epstein. The former employee told the Journal that the Microsoft founder continued his relationship with Mr. Epstein despite Ms. Gates telling her husband she was uncomfortable with the man. Mr. Epstein died in jail in August 2019 while awaiting trial for multiple sex trafficking charges. In 2019, the New York Times reported that Mr. Gates had met with Mr. Epstein on multiple occasions, and once they had late into the night at his Manhattan townhouse. It is understood Ms. Gates held a number of calls in October 2019 following the New York Times report. That same year, Richard Arnold, a spokesperson for Ms. Gates, for Mr. Gates, said he regrets his decisions with Mr. Epstein, who were reportedly to discuss philanthropy. Bill Gates regrets ever meeting with Epstein and recognizes there was an error in judgment to do so, Ms. Arnold said at the time. Ms. Gates lifted the lid on some of the struggles within her marriage in her 2019 book, The Moment of Lift. The pair reportedly clashed over the handling of the Gates Foundation, with the 56-year-old revealing her desire to take over more responsibility alongside her already globally renowned husband, admitting it was hard to be heard. I've been trying to find my voice as I've been speaking next to Bill, and that can make it hard to be heard, she wrote. She sent a request to co-author the annual Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation letter, usually written solely by her husband, about particular strain on their 27-year marriage. I thought we were going to kill each other, she wrote. I thought, well, this might just end the marriage right here. I told him that there are some issues where my voice can make an impact, and in those cases I should be speaking separately or along with him. It got hot. We both got angry. It was a big test for us. Not about how you come to agreement, but about what you do when you can't agree. And we took a long time to agree. Mr. Gates' net worth is listed by Forbes as 168 billion Australian dollars, making him the world's fourth richest man behind Jeff Bezos at 253 billion, Bernardo Arnault at 236 billion, and Elon Musk at 215 billion. The Gates' divorce comes 2 years after another high-profile divorce. Another high-profile billionaire. Jeff Bezos finalized his split from his wife of 25 years, Mackenzie Scott. The couple ended in a massive settlement. Mr. Bezos gave Ms. Scott a quarter of their joint stocks in Amazon, worth about 32 billion United States dollars at the time, with the Gates settlement tipped to top that. And the same day, the couple announced their divorce. Mr. Gates' investment firm, Cascade Investment, transferred 1.8 billion US dollars, estimated 2.3 billion Australian dollars in stock to his wife. A securities filing revealed more than 14 million shares of Canadian National Railway was transferred to Ms. Gates last week. On the same day, the firm transferred more than 2.9 million shares of AutoNation to Ms. Gates, a separate filing showed. The transfers were among the first indications of how one of the world's wealthiest couples will go about divvying up their assets as they separate. The couple's divorce petition, which was filed on Monday in King County Superior Court in Washington State, indicated that they don't have a prenuptial agreement in place to distribute their assets. Instead, the two have signed a separation contract for dividing their property and possessions. But the terms of the agreement have not been publicly disclosed in court documents. Now, I said pretty much what I wanted to yesterday about it, though I will go on to say that this is going to be rather interesting and, based on what I've heard and seen, how will this play out in court? Will Bill Gates be the first domino to drop? Or be one of the first dominoes to drop? Because after all, most of the COVID-19 vaccines are probably developed under his auspices. Leave a comment below what you think about it. What do you think about Bill Gates' relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Was Melinda right for this? And I'll see you in the next video. Earlier today, the Republicans had voted Liz Cheney out of leadership. She was the third-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. And there's this from Reuters.com on it, so let's get right to it. She's a hero, Liz Cheney down but not out in Wyoming after crossing Trump. And it's by Nathan Knight and David Morgan. When lifelong Wyoming Republican Tage Benson and Democrat Shamois Anderson met for the first time at the Owl in the Attic antique store in Laramie this past weekend, they quickly put their political differences aside. Their home states embattled Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney needed to be supported, they agreed, for standing up to former President Donald Trump and contesting his false stolen election claims. This is where Democrats and Republicans can come together, said Anderson, 51, a wildlife advocate who often disagrees with Cheney on policy. She's a hero, said Benson, 67, who was working the store's register. He told Anderson his Democratic friends were talking about registering as Republicans to vote for Cheney in the party's primary election next year. I'm going to talk everyone into that, he said. Such a rare bipartisan show of support constitutes a political lifeline as a third-term Congresswoman and daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney fights for political survival. Cheney was removed on Wednesday from her position as the third-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives by her colleagues in a closed-door vote. Kevin McCarthy, the chamber's top Republican who was thought to placate Trump, has cast her ouster from the party leadership as necessary to unify Republicans and reclaim control of the House in 2022. Cheney is also in trouble in her home state of Wyoming, where Trump and Cheney both won with 70% of the vote in November. The majority is furious with the vote to impeach Trump for allegedly inciting the deadly January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol, and have repeated claim or criticism of his claims that the election was rigged. According to 40 voters, Reuters interviewed in conservative towns of Gillette and Douglas, one moderate Laramie, and the state capital of Cheyenne over 5 days this month. Mike Gapter, owner of a bedding and hot tub store in Laramie, said the 2020 ballot was his final vote for Cheney. She's proved herself unworthy, he said, but an unlikely coalition of traditional Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. About one-third of the voters interviewed said they would likely vote for her for support that could keep her hopes alive for re-election. It is too early for opinion polls about the primary. Wyoming law allows residents of any affiliation to vote in the Republican primary if they switch their registration on Election Day, potentially helping Cheney. She's 54 years old and will run for re-election in 2022 and intends to win, a spokesman for her office told Reuters. And she could prove to be a formidable target. Cheney raised $1.54 billion in the first quarter, her best fundraising quarter since she was elected in 2016, and pushing to oust her. House Republicans made clear that they see their fortunes tied to Trump and his fervent supporters, but his influence could alienate the independent, suburban, and women voters needed to take back control of the House, said Alex Conant, a former campaign aide to Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. House Republicans want to be associated with Trump, and they're taking a risk that it might turn off some independent voters, Conant said. Trump remains by far the most popular figure in the Republican Party. But polls show that voters are split over what to do with critics like Cheney, while a sizable minority of Republicans appear ready to move on from him. In a May 7th through 10th Voice or Ipsos opinion poll, 6 out of 10 Republicans said the party would be stronger when it embraced its supporters and critics of Donald Trump, while 4 in 10 think it's better that the party purges leaders who are critical of him. The poll also found that 3 in 10 Republicans are interested in joining a conservative political party that is run by former Republican leaders who have been critical of Donald Trump. Barbara Comstock, a former Republican congresswoman who lost her suburban Virginia seat in 2018 amid a surge of anti-Trump sentiment, said that ousting Cheney could prove dangerous for Republican incumbents from deeply conservative districts too, who could see their fealty to Trump challenged by an energized crop of Trump-inspired primary candidates. What they're going to open the door to is a situation where nobody's Trumpian now, she said. It's a problem for everybody. When asked about the inter-party fight over Cheney and its impact on House races, Tom Emmer, chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, said he is solely focused on retaking the majority. House Democrats are united in that effort, he said. Sparsely populated Wyoming is one of the most conservative states in the country, where Republicans outnumber Democrats by more than 3-1. In her first run for Congress in 2016, Cheney beat a crowded Republican primary field with about 40% of the vote. Even though fewer than 90,000 people voted in total, she received more than 70% of the vote in successive primaries and has won general elections just as easily. 6 Republicans have already announced that they will run against her next year. Anger toward Cheney was evident at a coffee shop called The Local in Gillette, a town of 32,000 people and at the center of the Powder River Basin, whose mines produce about 40% of the coal output in the United States. All 5 men at a table in the back of The Local said that they could not support Cheney after she went against Trump. We're very loyal people here, said Paul Roberts, 47 years old. We did not elect her to vote her conscience. Now, if she decides to run, Cheney could potentially outform a fragmented field of challengers, although Trump had recently said he would endorse a candidate soon. There is also a history of Democrats in the state of switching sides in primaries to help defeat more conservative candidates, political observers say, including in 2018 the boast of Republican Governor Mark Gordon. Genesee Kendall, a 23-year-old independent who works at a wine shop in Cheyenne, said she would consider registering as a Republican to help Cheney win. I respect what she is trying to do 100%, said Kendall. Brendan Buck, once a top aide of former House Speaker Paul Ryan, was less sanguine about her future. This is a Republican Party that reflects a base, and it's a base that wants what Donald Trump is selling. Now, even though I am in Florida, you know, we have our share of Republicans, kind of like like Liz Cheney. In fact, one of them had left the Republican Party to run as an independent and for senator against Marco Rubio in 2012, and is now a Democrat. Congressman from Tampa. His name is Charlie Crist. But yeah, so I'm keeping my eyes on what's happening up there, and there's also this from the Deseret News out of Utah. House Republicans oust Representative Liz Cheney from GOP leadership post. Embrace the Trump era. Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives continue to embrace former President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement. Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives have voted to remove Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney from GOP leadership in Congress. In a months-in-the-making decision, House Republicans ousted Cheney on Wednesday morning from her third-ranking position as a caucus's conference's chairwoman. Cheney has been a vocal and constant critic of former President Donald Trump. The Republicans' voice vote lasted less than 20 minutes during a closed-door session, the Associated Press reported. Speaking to the caucus before the vote, Cheney told her peers, "If you want leaders who will enable and spread his, meaning Trump's, destructive lies, I'm not your person. You have plenty of others to choose from. That will be their legacy," Politico reported. But I promise you this. After today, I will be leading the fight to restore our party and our nation to conservative principles, to defeating socialism, to defending our republic, to make the GOP worthy again of being the party of Lincoln, she said. On Tuesday evening, Cheney addressed the House in a floor speech condemning Republicans for supporting Trump's baseless claims of election fraud. Few quotes here. "Today we face a threat America has never seen before. A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him. He risks inciting further violence," Cheney told the House. "The election is over. This is the rule of law. That is our constitutional process. Those who accept the rulings of our courts are at war with the Constitution," she said. Remaining silent and ignoring the lie emboldens the liar, Cheney said of the GOP's continued support of Trump. "I will not participate in that. I will not sit back and watch in silence while others lead our party on a path that abandons the rule of law and joins the former president's crusade to undermine our democracy." She also tweeted out, "Freedom only survives if we protect it. We must speak the truth. The election was not stolen. America has not failed." And there's a photo involved in it. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy from California said this past weekend that he lost confidence in Cheney's role as a leader in the party and supported replacing her with New York Representative Elise Stefanik. "Everyone in leadership serves at the pleasure of the caucus," McCarthy said on Fox News Sunday. In a letter to House Republicans ahead of Wednesday's vote, McCarthy said each day spent relitigating the past is one less day we have to seize the future, according to Politico. Republican House Representative Steve Scalise, the caucus's second-ranking leader, also said last week that he supported replacing Cheney with Stefanik. Cheney, a staunch conservative and daughter of former two-term Vice President Dick Cheney, survived a similar confidence vote in February by a sweeping 145-61 margin. That vote came a month after the representative and 9 other House Republicans voted to impeach former President Trump. The House Republicans' latest rebuke of Cheney, who's continued to be outspoken against Trump's big lie about election fraud, appears to show that the GOP is doubling down on the former president's Make America Great Again movement. Former Republican Arizona Senator Jeff Flake said on Twitter Wednesday that Cheney was removed from House leadership from telling the truth. In the end, the truth will prevail, Flake said in defense of Cheney. In an op-ed in the Washington Post on Tuesday, Flake said, "This is your contemporary Republican Party where today there is no greater offense than honesty. It is elementary to have to say this, but we did not become a great nation by believing or espousing nonsense or by embracing lunacy. And if my party continues down this path, we will not be fit to govern," the Republicans said in the op-ed. And here's a tweet from Jeff Flake. Liz Cheney has been removed from House leadership for speaking the truth. In the end, truth will prevail. Representative Adam Kinzinger, a Republican from Illinois and lieutenant colonel in the Air National Guard, said in a Twitter thread on Wednesday morning, "As a Christian, we have to read the words of Christ many times. Nowhere have I seen him or imply that it's okay, or seen him say or imply that it's okay to lie as long as you own the libs. My hope is that America awakens to recognize that there are many that feel left behind or that Trump manipulates, but to help them we need to stop reflecting their fears back at them, listen to them, and have solutions. I hope we wake up and admit that it was us that caused January 6th and use us to change course," the Republican congressman said. And there's a tweet, "As a Christian, I read the words of Christ many times. Nowhere have I seen him or say or imply that it's okay to lie as long as you own the libs. I believe our open lies are an absolute abdication of our duty, and it is shameful." Ahead of Wednesday's vote to unseat Cheney from GOP leadership, Trump said he looked forward to Cheney's removal and that Republicans' House of Representatives have a great opportunity today to rid themselves of a poor leader, according to a post on his new media platform from the desk of Donald J. Trump. After the vote, the twice impeached former president said Cheney is bitter and accused a congresswoman of having become a talking point for Democrats. And that's definitely true there. I mean, like I said, it'll be interesting to see just where the Republicans go from here. As a matter of fact, we have about 1 year and 8 months until the 2022 midterm election, which means that between now and probably September of 2022, the people will be tossing their hats in the ring to run for Congress in respective states and respective districts. So be very interesting to see just who steps up to run against Liz Cheney in the primary. And there's this from the AP. GOP dumps defiant Trump critic Cheney from House Post by Alan Fram and Kevin Fricking. Republicans dumped GOP Representative Liz Cheney from her House leadership post Wednesday for her persistent repudiation of Donald Trump's election falsehoods, underscoring the hold the defeated and twice impeached former president retains on his party. She defiantly insisted that they should keep trying to wrench the party from him and his destructive lies. Meeting behind closed doors, European lawmakers needed less than 20 minutes and a voice vote to oust the Wyoming congresswoman from her job as their number 3 House leader. The banishment, urged by Trump and other top Republicans, showed his ability to pen the careers of antagonists, even those from GOP royalty. Cheney, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, has repeatedly rebuked Trump for his oft-repeated falsehood about his 2020 re-election was fraudulently stolen from him, and for his encouragement of supporters who assaulted the Capitol on January 6. On Wednesday, she unrepentantly lashed out anew. If you want leaders who will enable and spread his destructive lies, I'm not your person, she told her colleagues before the vote. According to a person who provided her remarks on condition of anonymity, you have plenty of others to choose from. That will be their legacy. Just minutes after she accused her fellow Republicans of dishonestly buttressing Trump, House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy of California told reporters at the White House, I don't think anybody is questioning the legitimacy of the presidential election. I think that it's all over with. McCarthy spoke a week after Trump released a statement saying the fraudulent presidential election of 2020 will, from this day forth, be known as a big lie. Cheney's critics say her offense wasn't her view of Trump, but her persistence in publicly expressing it, undermining the unity that they want party leaders to display in advance of next year's election, where they hope to win House control. Several also say that GOP voters' allegiance to Trump means that the party's electoral prospects without him would be dismal. Cheney's ouster effectively means that the GOP is setting a remarkable requirement for admission to its highest ranks. Adherence to orderly silence about Trump's fallacious claim about widespread voting fraud. In states around the country, officials and judges of both parties found no evidence to support his assertions. Cheney, 54, said it would seem to have an uphill climb in her quest to redirect the GOP away from Trump. She's told Republicans she's not quitting Congress and will run for re-election next year, but she will have to survive a near-certain GOP party primary challenge from a Trump-recruited opponent. Even if she returns to the House, it is unclear how loud her voice will be inside a party that has all but disowned her. And though she has establishment lineage and embraces classical GOP conservative stances, it almost seems that the party has evolved out from under her. Polls show that Trump's hold is deep and wide on the party's voters, and many of the time-tested conservative views she and her father share, including a belief in steadily projecting U.S. military force abroad, have lost ground to Trump's inward-focused America First agenda. Even so, Cheney showed no signs of being bashful about her mission. Outside the GOP meeting, she told reporters that the country needs a Republican Party that is based on fundamental principles of conservatism, and I am committed and dedicated to ensuring that that's how this party goes forward, and I plan to lead the fight to do that. She added, I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office. Wednesday's voice vote by House Republicans means there is no precise way to measure just how much support Cheney would have had, though only a handful of GOP candidates would have spoken out on her behalf. What happened today was sad, said Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, another Trump critic and one of the few Republicans who have publicly defended her. Liz committed the only sin of being consistent in telling the truth. The truth is that the election was not stolen. Hard-right conservatives among Cheney's fiercest critics were exultant, and Trump himself took a sharp elbowed victory lap, saying Liz Cheney is a bitter, horrible human being. I watched her yesterday and realized how bad she is for the Republican Party. She has no personality or anything good having to do with politics or our country. La 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 la, la 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 la, hey hey, goodbye Liz Cheney. Tweeted Representative Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina. You can't have a conference here who recites Democrat talking points, said Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, a conservative leader using the formal title of Cheney's former post. As if trying to score Jordan's contention, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, said, Congresswoman Liz Cheney is a leader of great courage, patriotism, and integrity. Today, House Republicans declared that those values are unwelcome in the Republican Party. Now, participants said Cheney received a polite standing ovation after her remarks inside Wednesday's meeting. Then she had to endure what Representative Byron Donalds of Florida said was a deafening voice vote to topple her. Her replacement in the party's House leadership is expected to be Representative Elise Stefanik of upstate New York, who entered the House in 2015 at age 30. Then the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. Stefanik owns a more moderate voting record than Cheney, but has evolved into a vigorous Trump defender who echoes some of his claims about widespread election cheating. Some of Washington's hardest right conservatives have remained wary of Stefanik's moderate record, but no challenger has emerged. Representative Ken Buck, Republican Colorado, said the vote on replacing Cheney will occur Friday. Cheney arrived in Congress in 2017 and by November 2018 was elected to a leadership job unopposed. Her career path seemed to potentially include runs at becoming Speaker, Senator, or even President. She occasionally clashed with Trump during his presidency over issues like the U.S. withdrawal from Syria, but visually open warfare between the two commenced in January when she became one of 10 House Republicans to back his second impeachment for inciting his supporters' deadly Capitol assault. The Senate acquitted him. Cheney withstood a February effort to boot her from leadership in a 145-61 secret ballot, with the McCarthy speech on her behalf credited with saving her. That didn't happen this time. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see just what exactly specifically comes of all this. And yes, you just saw a couple of articles which I will get to tomorrow, one of which is Stefanik's political evolution mirrors today's story of today's GOP. That'll be in tomorrow's Week in Review. But there's also this from Politico.com. Cheney booted from GOP leadership spot by Melanie Zanona and Olivia Beavers. House Republicans voted quickly on Wednesday to remove Liz Cheney as their number 3 leader over her repeated criticism of Donald Trump, an extraordinary shakeup that ties the party tighter to Trump and threatens to create a new litmus test in the GOP. The remarkable and fast-moving campaign to dump Cheney, Congress's highest-ranking Republican woman, and replace her with a Trump loyalist, was orchestrated by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and his top deputies. The California Republican and his allies complained that Cheney's constant readiness to call out Trump's lies about the 2020 election was a distraction that prevented the party from unifying around a cohesive message to win back the House next year. Cheney briefly addressed the conference before the voice vote, vowing to keep fighting. If you want leaders who will enable and spread his destructive lies, I'm not your person. You will have plenty of others to choose from. That will be their legacy, said Cheney, who elicited a smattering of boos from her colleagues at the start of her remarks. But I promise you this, after today, I will be leading the fight to restore our party and our nation to conservative principles, to defending socialism, to defending our republic, to making the GOP worthy again of being the party of Lincoln, she added. Cheney, according to sources in the room, ended her remarks in a prayer, citing a Bible verse, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." McCarthy faced mounting pressure to oust Cheney from Trump and the right flank of his conference, a crucial voting bloc if he wants to claim the Speaker's gavel after the midterms. His push to unseat his own number 3 culminated Wednesday in a leadership eviction that proved most shocking because of how quickly the outcome became predictable. Cheney was recalled as conference chair, a role responsible for both party messaging and member services. Veteran GOP Representative Virginia Foxx of North Carolina introduced a formal resolution to boot Cheney during Wednesday's closed-door meeting. The old saying for leaders is, if no one is following you, you're only taking a walk. You, Liz, are only taking a walk, Foxx said, according to a source in the room. McCarthy told Republicans it was a tough day, but said he supported the motion, arguing that it was necessary for party unity. After Cheney was booted, she then walked right down the middle of the aisle through the crowd and left the room. Members later gave her a standing ovation in recognition of her service. "I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office," Cheney told reporters after the vote. A replacement election for the House GOP conference chairmanship will take place Friday, McCarthy announced at the meeting. Now, so far, Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, a moderate-turned-Trump ally, is the only candidate running for the position. She's been working quickly to lock down support, while McCarthy members close to him are ripping members hard to support her. Each state's been relitigating the past as one less day we have to seize the future, McCarthy wrote in a letter to his colleagues ahead of the vote. If we are to succeed in stopping the radical Democrat agenda from destroying our country, these internal conflicts need to be resolved so as not to detract from the efforts of our collective team. Representative Ken Buck of Colorado, a member of the House Freedom Caucus who voted to certify the election results and had yielded floor time for Cheney's floor speech, said Wednesday the House GOP canceled Cheney for disagreeing with Trump. Cheney's removal from leadership delivered a demoralizing blow to the small but vocal anti-Trump wing of the GOP, while setting up a major victory to hardline conservatives who failed to take her down in February and have agitated for her removal ever since. In a statement after the vote, Trump took a victory lap, but calling Cheney a warmonger and talking points for Democrats. Liz Cheney is a bitter, horrible human being. I watched her yesterday and realized how bad she is for the Republican Party, she said. She has no personality or anything good having to do with politics or our country. It's a stunning fall from grace for Cheney, a political scion who was once seen as a fast-rising star in the party. The Wyoming Republican passed on his Senate bid last year to seek her fortunes in the House and was floated as the future Speaker. Now Cheney is a woman in GOP exile who may struggle to even hold on to a congressional seat next fall. Yet Cheney, who has framed the debate as a fight for democracy and freedom, has made clear that she feels comfortable for being toppled for sticking to her beliefs. She didn't try to persuade GOP colleagues to keep her in the post, and now she arguably has an even higher profile and massive national platform to publicly share her stance. In a fiery floor vote on the eve of her ouster, she defiantly deemed Trump a threat we have never seen before. We must speak the truth, she added. Our election was not stolen and America has not failed. Frustrations inside the GOP conference over Cheney have brewed for weeks, with one member referring to the situation as a slow burn after easily holding on to power in February following her vote to impeach Trump. Cheney continued to speak her mind about the former president in interviews, press conferences, and op-eds. Republicans started to complain that they were being asked about Cheney by their constituents and donors back home. Those tensions reached a boiling point at the House GOP's annual policy retreat in Orlando late last month, where Cheney once again publicly split with McCarthy on Trump in a move that other Republicans saw as undermining their message. The effort to expel her from the number 3 spot in leadership escalated quickly after that. Even some of Cheney's closest allies, like Republican Representative Matt Gallagher of Wisconsin, and moderates who voted to fully certify Trump's loss, said a change was needed. Lawmakers from all corners of the conference said Cheney should have been focused on bashing the Biden administration, not continually shining a spotlight on their internal divisions over Trump. You can't have a Republican conference chair who continually recites Democrat talking points, said Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, a Freedom Caucus co-founder and Trump ally. You can't have a Republican conference chair who takes positions that 90% of the party oppose. I just don't see how that's helpful. While McCarthy argued just a few months ago that the GOP is a big tent that could house a multitude of viewpoints, Wednesday's vote suggests that the party's competing Trump factions in the party may be too difficult to reconcile. Look, I'm all for unity. I'm all for unity and truth. Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, who voted to impeach Trump, told reporters Wednesday, but he added, truth cannot coexist with lies, truth cannot coexist with falsehoods. You cannot unify with that. Aside from Kinzinger, though, the vast majority of House Republicans were conflicted about dethroning Cheney, even if some of them were uncomfortable with the optics or privately worried about the potential repercussions for voters in 2022. Republicans say McCarthy will likely suffer little consequences, at least internally, for purging Cheney from their leadership ranks. And unlike February's attempt at Cheney dethroning, McCarthy is not dealing with simultaneous drama caused by controversial Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. At the time, McCarthy felt that it would be politically disastrous to defend Greene while ousting Cheney, so he ultimately stood behind both lawmakers. Now McCarthy has some distance from both the Greene turmoil and January 6, but Democrats plan to make the moment as painful as possible for Republicans. They have already seized on the Cheney chaos, using her expulsion to yoke the entire GOP to Trump, the conspiracy theories of Q, and lies about election fraud circulating on the right. Congresswoman Liz Cheney is a leader of great courage, patriotism, and integrity. Today, House Republicans declared that those values are unwelcome in the Republican Party, Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a statement. For the sake of our democracy, reasonable Republicans across the country must take back their party. And there's also this from Fox News. What Liz Cheney told Republican colleagues before they quickly voted her out. Cheney warned that those who enable Trump could harm their legacy. Representative Liz Cheney spoke to her colleagues in the House Republican conference on Wednesday morning, shortly before she was ousted as a conference chair by a floor vote. Fox News obtained her comments from a source who was in the room. In the short speech, Cheney hammered former President Donald Trump for what she said are efforts to unravel our democracy, and warned those who enable Trump risk tarnishing their legacy. She also prayed, quote, quoting John 8:32. Representative Ken Buck of Colorado said Cheney got a standing ovation for her remarks, despite the fact that she was still ousted shortly after in the brief meeting. Below are Cheney's statements, according to the source familiar with them. She said, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege, and then we will have the prayer and pledge. I have tremendous affection and admiration for many of you in this room. I know we all came to Washington to do important work for the nation. History has chosen every single one of us, and history has put us here at this moment of challenge for our country. Our nation needs this Republican Party as a strong party based on truth so that we can shape the future. To do that, we must be true to our principles and to the Constitution. We cannot let the former president drag us backward and make us complicit in his efforts to unravel our democracy. Even that path lies, or down that path lies our destruction and potentially the destruction of our country. If you want leaders who will enable and spread his destructive lies, I'm not your person. You have plenty of others to choose from. That will be their legacy. But I promise you this, after today, I will be leading the fight to restore our party and our nation to conservative principles, to defeating socialism, to defending our republic, to making the GOP worthy again of being the party of Lincoln. Let us pray, dear God, fill us with a love of freedom and a reverence for all your gifts. Help us to understand the gravity of this moment. Help us to remember that the Democrat systems can fray and suddenly unravel. When they do, they are gone forever. Help us to speak the truth and remember the words of John 8:32. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. May our world see the power of faith. May our nation know the strength of selfless service. And may our enemies continue to taste the inescapable force of freedom. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. As many Republicans are aiming to move on from the presidential election and Trump's false claims that it was stolen, and still others are saying that the party needs help of the former president in the midterms, consensus emerged that Cheney's regular broadsides against Trump were counterproductive. Representative Byron Donalds of Florida said Cheney was becoming a distraction for Republicans. Today's vote shows that Republicans are united behind one goal, taking back the House. Representative Lance Gooden of Texas added, others in the conference were less reserved about Cheney's removal from party leadership. La 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 la, la 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 la, hey hey, goodbye, Liz Cheney. Representative Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina tweeted, the most likely replacement for Cheney as conference chair is Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, a staunch Trump defender. Stefanik has the backing of Republican leader Kevin McCarthy of California and Republican Rep. Steve Scalise of Louisiana. Now, the vote is on Friday. I will have the results of that in the video on Friday, but let me know in the comments down below for what you think about the vote to evict Liz Cheney from GOP leadership. What do you think about the Republicans' chances in 2022? And I'll see you in the next video. Yesterday I mentioned that Liz Cheney was voted out as GOP conference chair. and there are a lot of people considered running for that seat, two of which in particular are Elise Stefanik and Chip Roy, and I'm going to highlight those two today. Right now we have this from the Associated Press. Stefanik's political evolution mirrors the story of today's GOP. There was a time not long ago when Elise Stefanik would not say Donald Trump's name. He was simply my party's presidential nominee, she would say. The pragmatic New York congresswoman was far more focused on welcoming a new generation of voters to what she hoped would be a more inclusive Republican Party. Today, Stefanik is one of Trump's fiercest defenders in the House of Representatives, where her loyalty to the former president and the support he returned has carried the 36-year-old to the brink of becoming one of the most powerful women in Congress. She is widely expected to become the third-ranking House Republican in the coming days once Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming is stripped of her leadership post because of her vocal criticism of Trump. Stefanik's rise is linked to her commitment to bringing more Republican women to Congress, an effort that helped make the GOP, or the House GOP's 2021 first-term class, one of the most diverse in history. But those close to Stefanik suggest that there is one woman above all that solidified her political transformation and rise in Republican politics, and that woman had little to do with diversity. It was a Thursday night in November 2019, and Trump's first impeachment inquiry was raging on Capitol Hill. Stefanik had emerged as a leading Trump defender in committee hearings, but on that night she brought her message to Fox News' Sean Hannity for the first time. After attacking the Democrats' case for impeachment, she asked Fox viewers to send money to a website designed to protect her from a growing wave of political attacks. Within 15 minutes, she had raised $250,000, aides later tweeted. Several hundred thousand more flowed into her campaign by the next morning. Her team had never seen anything like it, according to people with direct knowledge of her operation, who spoke on condition of anonymity to disclose private discussions. The snowball grew the next day when Trump went on Fox and Friends and praised Stefanik. It grew still more weeks later when Trump singled her out during a White House event as he quoted about beating impeachment. In total, Stefanik raised more than $13 million over that cycle, almost twice as much as the combined fundraising totals from her previous three elections. She raised an additional $2 million for Republican candidates and assembled what her office now describes as one of the 5 strongest donor email lists among 212 House Republicans. She never wavered in supporting Trump again. Even as staff heavily encouraged her to moderate her message in the coming weeks, Stefanik leaned harder into Trumpism. Her team began regularly insulting critics and reporters on social media. Her transformation was complete when Stefanik, a former White House aide under President George W. Bush and admirer of former House Speaker Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, voted against certifying the 2020 election results even after a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6. Stefanik's evolution is a story of the modern Republican Party, which has come to believe that the path to power and fundraising success runs through Trump, whether party members like him or not. A few Republicans have resisted his influence, including Cheney, but the vast majority has fallen into line even as Trump continues to spread the same disinformation about the 2020 election that inspired the January 6 insurrection. Trump has been our strongest supporter of any president when it comes to standing up for the Constitution. Stefanik said this past week on former Trump aide Steve Bannon's War Room podcast. In the same interview, she again cast doubt about the integrity of the 2020 election, even though allegations about widespread voter fraud has been discredited by senior Trump administration officials and dozens of judges across the country. Those who have worked closely with Stefanik describe her as hardworking, smart, and disciplined messenger, tenacious in her pursuit of embracing Republican voters and framing the terms of the debate. She became a policy aide in the Bush White House after graduating from Harvard University in 2006. By the time the 2012 presidential election arrived, she was a well-guarded political operative with strong ties to the Republican establishment. She joined former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty's short-lived presidential campaign before going to work for Mitt Romney, the party's presidential nominee against the Democrat incumbent Barack Obama. After the election, Stefanik moved from Washington to her parents' home in upstate New York with an eye on the U.S. House seat, left open by Democrat Bill Owens' retirement, In what was widely considered a swing district, the 30-year-old Stefanik won the race and became the youngest woman at that time ever elected to Congress. She found success with a moderate message focused on bringing a new generation of voters to the Republican Party. Jeff Graham, the former mayor of Wyoming, New York, remembers meeting the fresh-faced Stefanik a year before the election. He quickly became the supporter. At first I said, "Who the hell is she?" And when I Googled, couldn't find a lot about her, he said. Even though she was young, she had a rich background, being in the Bush White House and being pals with Paul Ryan. In her early years in Congress, Stefanik earned a reputation as a studious moderate who stayed close to her district, a massive rural expanse of upstate New York bordered by Vermont to the east and Canada to the north. She paid especially close attention to Fort Drum. She put politics aside, said Carl Zalman, chairman of the Saratoga County Republican Committee. She knows how to roll up her sleeves and get things done. Facing her first re-election test in 2016, she was reluctant to embrace Trump. She initially backed Ohio Governor John Kasich's presidential bid. The decision to support the Ohio moderate was in line with her voting record. Stefanik has a lifetime rating of 48% from the Conservative Heritage Action for America and 35% from Clifford Grove, among the lowest grades for House Republicans. In the late spring of 2016, when Trump emerged as the GOP's presumed presidential nominee, local press noted that she refused to say Trump's name, promising only to support my party's nominee in the fall. Stefanik became a more vocal Trump supporter as the election approached, but she regularly reminded voters that she disagreed with him at times. She described his remarks captured on video about sexually assaulting women as offensive and just wrong. She warmed to Trump further after he took office. She also started a political action committee, Elevate PAC, designated to bring more Republican women to Congress. She was widely praised for her effort last fall when 18 of the 30 women she endorsed won. One of them was Representative Ashley Hinson, an Iowa Republican, who said she was in constant contact with Stefanik throughout her election. Beyond offering strategic guidance and moral support, Stefanik helped connect Hinson with her network of donors and political contacts in Washington. It was an important and very pivotal year for the GOP in terms of telling the story that we were a party of women, minorities, and veterans, Hinson said, and Elise had a great hand in that. Trump was impressed too. While Cheney's conservative ratings were far superior than Stefanik's, Trump this past week called Cheney a warmongering fool who has no business in Republican Party leadership. Elise Stefanik is a far superior choice, and she has my complete and total endorsement for GOP conference chair, he said in a written statement. Elise is a tough and smart communicator. Back in upstate New York, longtime voters have noticed Stefanik's evolution. Graham, the former Watertown mayor, acknowledged that Stefanik had become more Trumpian, but like many other Republicans in the rural district, he's generally pleased with the trajectory of her career. Members of Congress up here have not had much time on the national stage, Graham said. We're proud of most of it. Now, Stefanik is a rather interesting and intriguing woman, and there's a little bit more about her. This from the USA Today, entitled, "Who is Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman who could replace Liz Cheney in GOP leadership?" After holding the position as the third-ranking House Republican for nearly 3 years, Representative Liz Cheney lost her leadership role at Wednesday after she criticized former President Donald Trump and his debunked election fraud claims. The frontrunner to take Liz Cheney's place in House leadership is Representative Elise Stefanik, a New York Republican who, in the last years of the Trump administration, emerged as a loyal and vocal defender of the 45th president. Stefanik, 36 years old, now has the backing of the top 2 Republicans in the House. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Rep Steve Scalise of Louisiana, as well as Trump. Trump issued a statement earlier this month through his Save America PAC in which he slammed Cheney as a warmongering fool who has no business in Republican Party leadership, and through his support by Stefanik. "We want leaders who believe in the Make America Great Again movement and prioritize the values of America first," the former president said. He continued, Stefanik is a far superior choice, and she has my complete and total endorsement for GOP conference chair. Elise is a tough and smart communicator. But just who is the New York Congresswoman? Well, here's what you need to know about the Stefanik. One of the youngest lawmakers elected, Stefanik, who when she was elected in 2014 was at age 30, was then the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. That title has since gone to fellow New York Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was elected during the 2018 midterms. Stefanik wrote a USA Today op-ed in 2019 with advice for both Ocasio-Cortez and former Representative Abby Finkenauer, the one-term Iowa Democrat who turned 30 a week before she was sworn in 2019. She told them to understand that along with this record is a responsibility to embrace younger women to seek office and have the courage to step into the arena. If Stefanik is successful in replacing Cheney, she would be the first millennial and one of the few women to hold the position. Harvard Bush White House Romney campaign. Prior to being a member of Congress, Stefanik attended Harvard University before joining the George W. Bush administration as an aide. In 2012, she advised then Vice Presidential candidate Paul Ryan and prepped him for his debate against then Vice President Joe Biden, before deciding to run to join the former House Speaker in Congress. Rose to Republican fame during first Trump impeachment. During Trump's first impeachment trial in 2020, Stefanik was named one of the members of Trump's impeachment defense team after her viral role in the House's proceedings. Their unofficial role was to do media appearances and work on messaging behind the scenes to counter the House manager's case against the President of the Republic. Trump called Stefanik a new Republican star as she defended him against Democrats. The House impeached Trump, but the Senate acquitted him on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress related to his dealings with Ukraine. Objected to electors in 2020 election. After a pro-Trump mob stormed the Capitol in January on the day a joint session of Congress met to count the results of the 2020 presidential election, in which Trump lost to Biden, Stefanik signed objections to electors in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, but only Pennsylvania was among those brought to a vote. Tens of millions of Americans are concerned about the 2020 election featured unconstitutional overreach by unelected state officials and judges ignoring state election laws, Stefanik said on the House floor. Cheney disapproved of objecting to the election results and said it set exceptionally dangerous precedent. Ranks as one of the most bipartisan and didn't always vocally support Trump. Despite her vocal support for Trump, Stefanik consistently ranks as one of the most bipartisan lawmakers, is more moderate when it comes to legislation, and wasn't always as outspoken in her support for the 45th president. For the 116th Congress, which ran from 2019 to 2020, according to the Bipartisan Index, from the nonpartisan public policy think tank, the Lugar Center, Stefanik was ranked as the 13th most bipartisan member of Congress. The year prior, she landed at number 24, or she landed at number 14. Policy-wise, Stefanik is more moderate than some of her GOP House colleagues and voted with Trump less than Cheney did. According to 538, Cheney voted with Trump 92.9% of the time, while Stefanik voted with him 77.7% of the time. For example, Stefanik opposed Trump's 2017 tax cuts and has supported giving legal status to undocumented immigrants brought to the country as children. In 2016, she kept her distance from then-candidate Trump, saying she endorsed the Republican Party's nominee without mentioning Trump's name. Now, she went from not attending the 2016 Republican National Convention in Cleveland to speaking at the party's 2020 virtual convention. During her speech this past summer, she railed against Democrats in her support for Trump, saying that the American people were not swayed by these partisan attacks. Our support for President Trump is stronger than ever before. And that's that. So that's Elise Stefanik. Now we move on to Chip Roy as I get a little bit of liquid refreshment here. This from Politico, Chip Roy weighs a last-minute challenge to Stefanik for House GOP No. 3. I don't believe there should be a coronation, he told reporters Wednesday. Texas Representative Chip Roy is considering launching a bid for House GOP conference chair, according to multiple Republican sources, as conservatives fret that the party is moving too quickly to anoint a successor to newly deposed Liz Cheney. Roy, a member of the hardline Freedom Caucus, is one of several conservatives to publicly express concern about elevating Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, a moderate turned Donald Trump ally who is moving swiftly to lock down support for the No. 3 post. Notably, Stefanik has the backing of the former president and GOP leaders. Undaunted, Roy sent a memo to every Republican office in the conference on Tuesday arguing that Stefanik should not be serving in leadership and taking off a long list of issues with their voting record. He also had been pushing for a delay in the election to replace Cheney, Republican from Wyoming, which will take place later this week. I don't believe there should be a coordination, Roy told reporters on Wednesday. I believe that if the leader wants us to be united, then he should take the time to do this the right way. Roy declined to say whether he was considering an official bid for the position, saying, "Let's see what happens over the next 24 hours." But his spokesperson said in a statement that they're not ruling anything out. His focus is on serving Texas's 21st congressional district, the American people and the Constitution, Roy's spokesperson said in a statement. But if the position must be filled, then this must be a contested race, not a coronation. One source familiar with Roy's thinking said he plans to jump into the race if no one else does. His potential candidacy for conference chair was first reported by the Daily Caller. I believe that's the article that I have, which I will read next. It is. But the Texan, a one-time chief of staff to Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, doesn't have much time to make a decision. After House Republicans moved swiftly Wednesday to House Cheney, House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy announced that a candidate for her replacement will take place Thursday evening, and the election will be held Friday morning. Plus, Stefanik is miles ahead with the whipping operation, and her camp is feeling confident that they have all but locked down enough support to win the post. Even Republican Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, a prominent member of the Freedom Caucus, is backing Stefanik for the job. To help ease some members' concerns, Stefanik has been assuring members that she would not buck leadership on big votes and doesn't plan to stay in the role beyond 2022. She is slated to address the Freedom Caucus on Wednesday evening at the Conservative Policy Institute. Even so, Stefanik is starting to take heat from all sides. When she addressed the moderate Tuesday group, The New Yorker was pressed about whether Biden won the 2020 election, according to a source on the Zoom call. Stefanik responded by saying Biden is president, but said that there were voter irregularities that need to be addressed. And some Stefanik backers are questioning Roy's record on a key benchmark for House GOP leaders, Trumpism. One Republican source noted Roy did not heed the then-president's call for Republicans to vote against the certification of the election results from any state, nor did he sign on to a Texas brief in a lawsuit to overturn the election. Still, should he throw his hat into the ring, Roy, a troublemaking and constitution-obsessed former federal prosecutor, could prove to be an appealing alternative for angst-ridden conservatives who want to register their opposition to Stefanik. Representative Louis Gohmert, Republican of Texas, told reporters that I'm always for having multiple choices, and Republican Representative Ken Buck of Colorado admitted that Stefanik is likely to become the next Republican conference chair, even if he's not thrilled about it. I think she's liberal, Buck told reporters. I will not vote for Elise Stefanik. So that's a little bit about Chip Roy weighing a last-minute challenge. And in there was mentioned the Daily Caller article. I have that right here, so let's get right to that, shall we? We shall. Sources say Representative Chip Roy is considering a run against Representative Elise Stefanik for House leadership. This by Henry Rogers. Republican Texas Representative Chip Roy is reportedly considering a run against Republican New York Representative Elise Stefanik for House leadership after Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney was ousted from leadership Wednesday. the Daily Caller has learned. Two sources close to Roy said the Daily Caller, or told the Daily Caller, that he is considering a run against Stefanik after Cheney was removed from her leadership position by a voice vote Wednesday. Behind closed doors, Republicans voted Cheney out as the third-ranking House Republican. While not ruling anything out, Congressman Roy has never sought a position in conference leadership. His focus is on serving Texas's 21st congressional district. But if the position must be filled, then this must be a contested race, not a coronation. Or his office told the Daily Caller when asked about a possible run. Former President Donald Trump slammed Cheney Monday, saying she should be ousted from House leadership and replaced by Republican New York Representative Elise Stefanik. Trump released a statement saying Stefanik should replace Cheney as the third-ranking House Republican. The House GOP has a massive opportunity to upgrade this week from warmonger Liz Cheney to gifted communicator Elise Stefanik. Elise has intelligence and endorsement from American patriot Brandon Judd and the National Border Patrol Council. She has an A+ from the NRA and she loves our veterans, Trump said in a statement. We need someone in leadership who has experience flipping districts from blue to red as we approach the important 2022 midterms, and that's Elise. She knows how to win, which is what we need, he added. And according to this, it says that more information will be added as it becomes available. Tomorrow morning is a vote. I might have it in my news briefing or rather in my weekend review article come tomorrow. But I know I do have a couple of other things in the hopper that I'm going to speak on. As a matter of fact, some of them deal with my other favorite topic, which is the Convention of States project. And yeah, so leave a comment below for what you think about Elise Stefanik and Chip Roy. You know, do you support Elise Stefanik for conference chair? Do you support Chip Roy? You know, did you support Liz Cheney? You know, what do you think about Cheney's ouster? Do you agree that the vote should be held off for a little while? Let me know down below, and I'll see you in the next video. And with all the turmoil in Washington, D.C., there is a little bit of good news on the states front. On Tuesday, the South Carolina State House and the Wisconsin State Assembly had passed a resolution calling for a convention of states for the purpose of proposing amendments to the Constitution. Under Article 5, there's this from Fritz.com on that topic, and this is by Fritz News. And it says, buoyed by their recent legislative successes, supporters of an Article 5 convention, or a convention of states, descended upon the South Carolina State House this week as their preferred legislation appeared poised for passage in the South Carolina House of Representatives. Lawmakers who spoke with me on Tuesday morning said the legislation, H3205, had more than 70 committed aye votes, including the vote of powerful Speaker of the House, Jay Lucas. That would obviously be more than enough votes for it to clear the 124-member Republican-controlled chamber. Supporters of the legislation cheered and toted signs on Tuesday morning as they staked out multiple entrances to the South Carolina State House garage, a multi-level underground parking facility reserved for state lawmakers and executive branch officials. One lawmaker, State Representative Jonathan Hill of Townville, South Carolina, was singled out by Convention of State supporters for a particular reason. Hill opposes this bill, believing that Article 5 neither imposes nor allows any limitations on the subject matter which may be considered at a Convention of States. Backers of the bill, who drove to Columbia, South Carolina, made it clear Hill was on their radar. Today we're going to send a message to Jonathan Hill and a shrinking handful of supporters who tried to derail conservative reform, one Convention of States backer told me. Like last year's proposed legislation that carrying the Article 5 bill would make an application to the U.S. Congress on behalf of the South Carolina General Assembly to call an amendment convention of the states pursuant to Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. Such a convention will be limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution to impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. Any proposal adopted by the convention would have to be ratified with 3/4 of the states, which is obviously a high threshold, especially in our polarized political climate. As I previously reported, the specific wording of this legislation matters a great deal. Convention of States supporters are fearful that their national bid will be rejected unless enough states submit identically worded resolutions to Washington, D.C. Also, there are other Article 5 bills to contend with, as other Convention of States efforts in South Carolina have been geared specifically toward the adoption of a balanced budget amendment. The Convention of States bill being pushed this week conforms with legislation that has already passed in 15 states, including neighboring Georgia and Florida. 8 other states, including North Carolina, have passed conforming legislation in at least one legislative chamber. 15 additional states, including South Carolina, have introduced such legislation. Earlier this year, H.R. 3205 was included as part of a conservative pushback agenda led by State Representative Bill Taylor of Aiken, South Carolina. For those of you who fell asleep during civic class, Article 5 is a section of the U.S. Constitution which deals with amending our nation's founding document. I noted in a recent article on the subject, an Article 5 convention is one of 2 methods by which changes to the Constitution can be proposed, with such a convention being called in the event 2/3 of the several states make an application to Congress. The other method for proposing amendments is a 2/3 vote of both the U.S. House and Senate. Again, though, whether an amendment is proposed by Congress or by a convention of states, it must be approved by 3/4 of all states before taking effect. Whether a convention of states bill passed the South Carolina House, stay tuned to find out. That was posted Tuesday morning, and I have good news for you. This coming from the Associated Press, and the headline is a little bit misleading. I'll get to that in a minute. South Carolina House okays Constitutional Convention call. The State House approved Tuesday a proposal that would add South Carolina to a list of states calling for a convention to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The proposal passed 66 to 42. It would have South Carolina limit its call to the convention to a few items, limiting the spending checks on the federal government, limiting the federal government's jurisdiction and power, and setting term limits for Congress. A group of a few dozen enthusiastic supporters waved signs and cards as they entered the State House garage, and then settled into the second-floor lobby for several hours of debate Tuesday. Representative Bill Taylor, who has pushed for the proposal for years, told members that they have the power to change Washington, D.C. by voting for the resolution. They will never, ever, ever limit their own power. The Aiken Republicans said of the federal government. It's human nature. The resolution is now sent to the Senate. With 2 days left in the session, there isn't enough time for senators to take it up. But it will be waiting for them when they return in 2022. About 15 states have passed similar resolutions, and the Constitution requires 2/3 of states, or 34, to call for the convention. Supporters have pointed out whatever amendments are suggested by the convention will have to be passed by 3/4 of the states, 38 legislatures, or special conventions. About 15 states have passed similar resolutions, and the Constitution calls for 2/3 of states, or 34, to call for the convention before it could occur. Supporters have pointed out that whatever amendments are suggested by the convention would have to be passed by 3/4 of the states, 38 legislatures or special conventions. Calling the convention is only the first step, said Representative Weston Newton, a Republican from Bluffton. The only convention called in the nearly 250 years of the nation so far. The one that rewrote the current Constitution from scratch was initially proposed just to make changes to the original government charter of the U.S., the Articles of Confederation. Supporters of the proposal barely pushed aside an amendment that would have had the resolution last for just 2 years. They said it would have killed the proposal because backers could never get to 34 states in that short a time. Instead, the resolution was limited to 10 years. Democrats and several Republicans opposed the Constitutional Convention proposal. Democrats said there was no way to protect amendments that provided the rights to free speech, the prohibition of slavery, and the guarantee of full citizenship and rights to anyone born in the country. You cannot limit the scope of a constitutional convention. Everything is on the table, said Representative Cesar McKnight, a Democrat from Kingstree. Some Republicans said the convention could alter the country in ways that the Founding Fathers would oppose, like revoking the Second Amendment, assuring the right to bear arms, or protections for practicing religion. Don't fool yourselves into thinking we have a constitutional convention. It'll just be about a couple of conservative amendments, said Representative John McCravey, a Republican from Greenwood. Oh no, it can't be limited. Now, there's a lot to unpack in there. I'm gonna go into a deep dive on it in another video. I know I promised that a lot, but things have to be said about it, and I'll just say this much right now. It is not a constitutional convention. It is a convention for proposing amendments to this current Constitution. It's set out right there in the Constitution, Article 5, that it is a convention for the purpose of proposing amendments. And as a matter of fact, there is even a couple of pictures that point this out. So let's just get to the main picture about what a convention of states is, as opposed to an Article 5 convention. But okay. While this photo is loading out, let me just say that a constitutional convention opens up the entire Constitution, whereas a convention of states is limited in scope. Yes, it can be limited in scope, regardless of what people say. And here are some of the rules. Differences between a constitutional convention and an Article 5 convention. It proposes a new constitution, or the Constitutional Convention proposes a new constitution, while an Article 5 convention proposes amendments to the current constitution. The full powers and unlimited. The Article 5 convention is limited to the subject of state applications. I have an application which I will put out in a few minutes. The authority is outside of the authority of a constitutional convention is outside of the Constitution, whereas under Article 5, whereas in Article 5 convention, the authority is under Article 5 of the Constitution. Requirement to call a constitutional convention as a unanimous consent of states to be bound. Article 5 convention has an application by 2/3 of the states. The scope of the passage at a constitutional convention is the entire document as a whole, or the entire Constitution as a whole document, with the votes for the passage, unanimous consent required. At an Article 5 convention, the scope is individual amendments singly, and it's by a simple majority. And the scope of ratification by the states, the scope of ratification at a constitutional convention by the states is the entire Constitution as a whole document, whereas in Article 5 convention, the scope of ratification is individual amendments singly, and the vote for ratification by the states. Constitutional convention is limited to only the states. It only binds the states that ratify it, whereas in Article 5 convention, it's ratified by 3/4 and binds all states. And that's just one photo on that. Here's another photo on an Article 5 convention versus a convention of states. And this is a lot clearer. Proposed constitutional convention, new constitution, full powers. Constitutional convention is called by the states, whereas an Article 5 convention is called by Congress. So, but yeah, so there's a whole lot to unpack that that cannot be done in just a couple of minutes here. But yeah, so I will be doing an entire video on it later. But South Carolina House had passed it, and here is an article from U.S. News and World Report on the Wisconsin Assembly, and again, the headline's a little misleading. Wisconsin Assembly calls for a constitutional convention. The Wisconsin Assembly passed a resolution Tuesday calling for a convention of the states to consider making changes to the U.S. Constitution, an effort backed by Republicans and opposed by Democrats. The full legislature in 2017 passed a resolution that allowed for calling a convention to consider a balanced budget amendment. The latest proposal, which passed 58 to 36 and now goes to the Senate, is more expansive. It allows for the convention to consider three things: imposing fiscal restraints on the federal government, limiting the federal government's powers and jurisdiction, and imposing term limits for members of Congress and other federal officials. Democrats and other opponents argue that calling for a constitutional convention could get out of control, leading to far-ranging revisions that could drastically reshape the nation's founding document. That resolution has passed 15 states, mostly in the South. Congress must receive requests from 34 states to convene a convention of the states. A nearly identical measure passed the Wisconsin Assembly last session, but died in the Senate. Because it is a resolution, it need only pass both the state Senate to serve as a Wisconsin application to Congress for a convention of the states. Congress can also refer amendments to the states by a 2/3 vote of each chamber. Both methods require at least 38 states to ratify an amendment before it can take effect. And there's a little bit more on it from the Beloit, from the Beloit Daily News. And it says, it has the same misleading headline: Assembly calls for a constitutional convention. The Wisconsin Assembly passed a resolution Tuesday calling for a convention of the states to consider making changes to the U.S. Constitution, an effort backed by Republicans and opposed by Democrats. The full legislature in 2017 passed a resolution that allowed for calling a convention to consider a balanced budget amendment. And it goes on to say that it passed 58-36 and now goes to the Senate. Next paragraph allows for the convention to consider three things. Now, Democrats and other opponents argue that a constitutional convention could get out of control, leading to far-ranging revisions that could drastically reshape the nation's founding document. It's a pretty short article, pretty much said the same thing as in the U.S. News and World Report article. But yeah, okay, it's real easy to sign up for, it's really easy if you want your state to sign that petition. Just go right to this page. Just go to conventionofstates.com, And if you haven't registered or signed in, you get this page, which has the Article 5 Pocket Guide, beautiful, simple, and to the point. It's your one-stop shop for everything Article 5. And sign the petition. It says almost everyone knows that our federal government is on a dangerous course. The unsustainable debt, combined with crushing regulations on states and businesses, is a recipe for disaster. What is less known is that the founders gave state legislatures the power to act as a final check on abuses of power by Washington, D.C. Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution authorizes the state legislatures to call for a convention for proposing needed amendments to the Constitution. The process does not require the consent of the federal government in Washington, D.C. I support the Convention of States project, a national effort to call a convention under Article 5 of the United States Constitution, restricted to proposing amendments that will impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit its power and jurisdiction, and impose term limits on its officials and members of Congress. I want our states to be one of the necessary 34 states to pass a resolution calling for this kind of Article 5 convention. You can find a copy of the model resolution and the Article 5 Pocket Guide, which explains the process and answers many questions here. And there's a link to it, which I'll get to in a minute. I ask that you support the Convention of States project and consider becoming a co-sponsor of the resolution. Please respond to my request by informing the National COS team of your position or sending them any questions you have. Email info@conventionofstates.com, or the phone number is on the share here. Thank you so much for your service to the people of our district. Respectfully, your name, just add your first and last name, email, mobile phone for email updates and text messages, and provide your full address, and they will deliver your petition directly to the state legislators now and again during the legislative sessions, free of charge. They do protect your privacy, and there's a thing, if you live outside the U.S., please, and if you want to volunteer, there's a link to check it there. And how did you hear about us? Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin put out a book called The Liberty Amendment, and he talks about it a lot on his show. There's also a video from Prager University on the Convention of States. So all you have to do is send that to you. Just click send to my state legislators. Bada bing, bada boom, you're there. And here's the progress map. So we have many states that had passed it in one chamber. There were 15 states that had passed it in both. And there's active resolution in many states. Click on your state to find out just how you can get involved. And when you sign in, it takes you to this page, which changes this petition to this beautiful thing that's about your state. There's a Florida testimonial, Florida State Fair, Florida op-ed, tell your story, and there are a couple of videos. So, and of course here is a pocket guide, and as you can tell here, there's a lot of support from Ben Shapiro to Mark Levin, to Dr. Dobson, Michael Ferris, and David Barton. There are a lot of other notable supporters. Steve Hilton, economist Thomas Sowell is a supporter. There were even a few congressmen about that. If you have any questions or objections, this handbook will help you out. And here are some of the amendments that that are probably, that are up for consideration. Require members of Congress to live under the same laws that they pass for the rest of us. Impose term limits. Set term limits for Supreme Court justices. Set term limits for federal bureaucrats, ending the dominance of the swamp. There was a simulation back in 2016 with 137 commissioners representing every state gathering together. There's a video of it on YouTube, as well as at conventionofstates.com/COSM. And here is here's a model application. Section 1, the legislature of the state of blank hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States for the calling of a convention of the states, limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. And of course, any amendment adopted by the Convention of States which goes beyond the scope, as plainly stated in Section 1, cannot be considered for ratification by the states. That means that, your Second Amendment is going to be safe, your First Amendment is going to be safe, your 10th Amendment is going to be safe. All amendments will be safe. The only one that I could probably see as that won't be is the 17th Amendment, definitely, which is bring the senators back to representing the state legislatures, whereby the popular election of senators will be eliminated. Could also possibly see the 16th Amendment being eliminated, that being the income tax amendment. Those are the only two amendments that I definitely see that will be eliminated by the convention. And by the way, there are 15 states that had already ratified the application. You can see them right here. There are a couple of maps, as well as the bulletin board up top. But yeah, you have Georgia, Alaska, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Indiana, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arizona, North Dakota, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, Utah, and Mississippi. And you have South Carolina, Wisconsin, and North Carolina had it passed in the House and or Assembly. South Carolina and North Carolina had it passed in the House, and Wisconsin had it passed in the Assembly. So next up is the Senate. Here you can see links to the legislative pages, links to the resolution, and if you notice, like I said earlier, the resolution is the same in every state. There's also a Legiscan thing. There's also a Legiscan page on it, so you can follow along. There is one application that had failed last year, and I don't think there was any that had failed this year. I've not kept close tabs on it, admittedly, but definitely now. One thing, one objection that I always hear is that, Congress does follow the Constitution, Oh, really? Well, if that's the case, then there were actually two constitutions, as is pointed out here. The small one is the original Constitution, including the amendments. This big one is the annotated Constitution, which is analyzed and interpreted by the Supreme Court. You can, and as you see here, the original 1787 convention, including, or Constitution, including the 27 amendments, is anywhere from 21 pages to 85 pages. Then you have the annotated United States Constitution beginning in 1952, which was put out by the 82nd Congress, second session, which includes the Supreme Court cases and rulings through January 30th, 1952, 1,623 pages, and I have the size. Okay, I got all of these saved to my hard drive, or that is, have them saved to the hard drive, and I posted how much space they would take up on your computer. There's the annotated 1992 edition of the U.S. Constitution, which has supplements from 96, 98, and 2000. You can see here 2466 is the original, with 103 as a July 1st, 1996 supplement, 142 pages, June 28, 1998 supplement, 190 pages, June 28, 2020 supplement, total of 2,901. And in 2002, there was the annotated United States Constitution, which has supplements from 2004, 2006, 2008, and 2010. In the original June 28th had 2,630 pages. And if you add 74 pages added in 2004, 131 pages added in 2006, 186 pages added in 2008, and 231 pages added in 2010, you have 3,252 total pages. Then in 2012, you had the 112th Congress put out the annotated Constitution, no supplements, 2,816 pages. 2013 was 2,830 pages, same Congress. 2014, well, early 2014 July, you had 2,840 pages of the annotated U.S. Constitution. And late 2014, you had 66 more pages added for a total of 2,906. The most recent one that I had is the annotated United States Constitution of 2017, which had Supreme Court cases and rulings through July 26, 2017. That had 2,882 pages, and the supplement to that, which includes Supreme Court cases and rulings through June 28, 2018, 192 pages for a total of 3,074 pages. I have a link to all the additions and supplements. I even have links to the original Constitution, which is published by USConstitution.net, Constitute Project, United States Citizenship and Interpretation Service. That includes the Declaration of Independence, and the Capitol.net, and the U.S. Government Publishing Office, which, by the way, is where you can find the Constitution, the annotated United States Constitution since 1992. As you can tell, as you see with within these links here. So, but yeah, so the Constitution is being added to constantly by the U.S. Supreme Court. So, and right now it's about the size of a phone book. You can go to your local library and you can see it right there on the bookshelves. You know, it's about this thick. You know, it's a big tome, probably about as thick as a phone book. So you don't believe me? You don't believe this? Check it out for yourself. Do your research and think on that. Like I said, I will be doing more videos on the Convention of States, not for the a weekend review, but rather as a few standalone videos. But let me know in the comment down below what you think about Article 5 of the Constitution. Have you even heard of that before? You know, what, did you know about it? And if you had known, and if you don't know about it, based on what I've told you so far, and even shown you, but you know, do you support using the convention method found in Article 5? Because after all, the founders put the convention method in Article 5 for such a time as this. It's high time we heed their wisdom and use it. So let me know in the comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. And that's going to do it for the news for this week. I am Bulow. Again, if you like what you watched, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell an enemy or two even. And I will be back next week. Until next time, peace.